Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blue Hornets Live webinar, 7 Social Email Campaigns to Implement Today. I'm Ashley, the Digital Marketing Manager, and I'm joined by Kara Trivunovic, Blue Hornets VP of Strategic Services. Today we're talking social media, email, and how to integrate the two, from the quick and easy wins to the more complex campaigns. Now, before we get started, as always, we have a few housekeeping items. If you want to tweet any of the nuggets that Kara shares today, you can use the hashtag social emails. And also, we'll be having a Q&A via email chat today. If you guys are part of the Blue Hornet family, you're very familiar with email chat. It's one of our bi-weekly Twitter chats we have about everything digital marketing. We typically hold it on Wednesdays at 11 a.m., but today we're having a special edition just for this webinar. So if you are an expert tweeter, after the webinar is over, you can search on the email. You can ask your question using the hashtag email chat, or if you prefer, you can use the little box on the right-hand bottom side of the screen and enter your question there, and we'll be sure to answer it, ask it to Kara after the webinar is over. So with that, I will pass it over to Kara.
Thank you, Ashley. And if any of you noticed, Ashley was very proud that she said my name correctly. So I think it's taken us about 7 webinars to get it right, but
yes,
congrats.
I had nightmares last night about your last name, so I'm glad I got it right finally.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. As Ashley said, my name is Kara Trivunovic, and I'm the VP of Strategic Services here at Blue Hornet. I've been in the email and digital marketing space for about 15 years, and during that time I've had the opportunity to work with brands, large and small, across multiple verticals, including retail, financial services, travel and hospitality, publishing, and others. During those 15 years, I've had the unique opportunity to really be a part of and participate in the transformation and growth and really the evolution of email as a marketing channel, growing really from a very batch and blast, unknown, untrusted type of communication channel to a digital communication hub right now that really, drives and complements messaging in a multi-channel way. And, social is just another one of those channels. And so, today we really did want to spend, some time talking about where email and social kind of converge and what you can do, with that type of power. So we're going to spend a little bit of time here at the front end just discussing some unique channel characteristics. Email and social maintain their own kind of unique contribution to the conversation with a customer. And then we're going to dive into 7 programs that, leverage kind of the power of email and social cohesively. And then, as Ashley said, if you have questions throughout the webinar, don't, hesitate to put them in the Q&A box, and, at some point in time, we will absolutely get them answered. So we'll start with, the idea of social media as a marketing kind of vehicle. When the idea of social marketing came onto the scene, much like any other marketing channel, there was all this speculation in that it was going to kill email. And, the evolution of that quickly discovered that email wasn't going anywhere. As a matter of fact, some of the largest email marketers are social sites, which is really funny. But there was this discovery that, social and email really do have unique and complementary characteristics as marketing vehicles. And so, on the social side, it's important to, really kind of remember what it is you're doing and what you're faced with and what that experience is for the customer, in that social environment. So, the intention of that experience inside the social realm is that it is completely consumed inside the social environment. And so, for marketers, it's a great way to, drive some awareness and put content out there in the world. But, from an actionability standpoint, marketers, like to see, their efforts, especially digitally, drive content or traffic or engagement back to their site so that the customer can come back to their site, continue to engage with them as a brand, and that conversion happens then inside, the brand's e-commerce environment. And don't get me wrong. I mean, you have the ability inside of social environments to, drive traffic back to your site. I'm not saying that that's not the capability, but inside of social, I mean, it really is intended to, be a cohesive experience inside the social environment. Another consideration as you look at, kind of the social realm is that, it can be and oftentimes is a very real-time conversation that is happening. And, for marketers and for brands, finding both the time and the proper voice to respond appropriately is often a big determining factor in how successful a brand is in the social space. Which kind of leads to the third point that's up here, which is, the successful use of social requires flexibility. And, not always are marketers really given the ability to be flexible, either inside their brand or their communication practices, especially their voice. And social tends to be a much more casual type of channel. It's a channel that is far more conversational and friendly, even more so than email. And so if you look at kind of the evolution of a brand's voice inside of marketing messaging, inside of print and direct mail, it sometimes was, a little more formal in the business type of communication. In email, the voice got a little softer and got a little more friendly and was a little more relationship driven. And in social environments, it tends to be very, very bereft. It's short, and it is just a really quick exchange of conversation. It's like having a phone conversation with a friend. And a lot of times brands aren't as willing to be flexible in that, because once you put something out in the social environment, people glom onto it, and it can spread like wildfire. And making poor decisions in the social realm can be a very detrimental act as you're looking at how it impacts the brand. And so a lot of times the ability to be flexible in those conversations is removed, which also minimizes the ability to be effective, in using it for a lot of brands, especially the bigger the brand gets. The bigger the brand is, typically the less flexible, that kind of environment becomes for them. All right, so as we look at email, unlike social, email is completely customizable and relevant to an individual. So if you think about putting a message out in the social space, it tends to be something that is consumed by a larger group. It's kind of like telling a joke at a cocktail party. You have to make sure that it's appropriate for all audiences. In email, you can be very specific, right? You can have a very direct conversation with somebody in a very private way, and it allows for a much more intimate one-on-one conversation. So, really, as you look at the channel, I mean, email at its core is a relationship channel, and it works very well and is very effective in that type of environment. And so typically, a brand can send an email, and theoretically, a recipient can respond, and this dialogue begins, right? And as a complete side note, I was having a conversation with a client about this yesterday, but, email is a relationship channel. And so for any of you who have do not reply at domain.com as your reply to address for your email, that does not support this idea of having one-on-one communications with your customers. What it says to a customer is that we want to talk to you, but we don't want you to talk back to us. And so it really kind of defeats that whole purpose of that intimate one-on-one conversation. So as I said, it's a total side note, but something to take away and consider. So as you look at, really kind of then the purpose or how things have evolved, right, from a channel perspective, in social environments, a lot of times consumers aren't necessarily going there for offers and deals, but for the email channel, that's what they want, right? They're looking to, get their deals, get their coupons, get their offers, get their abandoned cart messages, because, as much as we'd like to believe that consumers don't know that we do that, they absolutely and totally do, and they recognize it, and sometimes they purposefully, skate the system to do it. But, this was further validated by, the 2013 Consumer Reviews survey that we ran this year, where consumers noted that receiving offers was the number one reason they signed up to receive email. And so, ultimately, your customers are raising their hands by giving you their email address and saying they want to be marketed to. And so, in the email channel, that conversation, those offers, your messages, it is something that they've asked for, and is consequently on the move with them. As more and more people have smartphones and they have access to email via those smartphones, the engagement with email is becoming more frequent. Sometimes while they're standing in line waiting, to pay for something, or I check my email all the time while I'm standing in line at security while I'm traveling. But the idea is that there's all this talk about mobile marketing, and email is mobile marketing. I mean, email is a mobile channel now, and it is highly accessible and is constantly being leveraged and used on the move. And so it really is something that customers can take with them, and it is something that they refer to relatively frequently. And so these are all just, some characteristics of the channels that I really wanted to outline and lay out for you before we really dive into, these kind of 7 programs. So, the idea here is, and I know there has been so much conversation around, social email and how email impacts social and vice versa. And, there really, sometimes it's about boiling things down to the basics. Right? It doesn't have to be, some wild idea on how we're going to drive, social traffic from our email program. Sometimes the easiest things are the most effective. And so blending, the characteristics that make email and social unique in a meaningful way, can be very successful as long as you do it with the customer in mind. So a lot of times what happens is, I'll have conversations with customers and brands, and they're wanting to leverage social so that they can learn more about their customer, right? They might want to use Facebook Connect in a way that will allow them to get more insight into the customer. And a lot of times that's where the conversation stops. And really, if that is what it is you're trying to accomplish, you have to continue through that thought process in the what's in it for me as the consumer. What value do you bring just because you know this about the customer? And so it's important to make sure that, as you look at how you can apply the combination of email and social, within the channels to your customer, that you are providing something of value to them and providing something of meaning. All right. So with that, I wanted to really kind of spend the majority of our time together talking through these programs and really looking at some ways that you can walk away from our conversation today and really be able to apply some of this to what it is you're already doing, or enhancing, what your approach is to, these 2 channels together. So some of the most powerful ways to leverage channels together in any marketing instance, right, is to sometimes look at the most obvious. So here, in the first program that we're looking at, is the idea of just truly including social share icons. And I'll never forget. When social first arose and everybody was talking about the integration of email and social, there's a lot of nose snubbing at the idea that including, social share links in your email communications makes the channels integrated. In some instance that is accurate, right? It's not necessarily, a complete integration. However, it still does bring those 2 channels together in a meaningful way. And So if you think about it, again, I had a conversation with a client about this just a couple of days ago. The argument was, putting social share icons into my email communication is just the next iteration or the next version of forward to a friend. And any of us who have been in the email space for any period of time know that including a forward to a friend link inside your email communication wasn't necessarily something that was clicked on very actively, right? Because the idea of engaging in that way is not really what the channel is designed for, right? When people want to share or forward an email communication from their inbox, they hit the forward link or the forward functionality inside their inbox. They don't use a mechanism or a tool or a widget inside the email communication. And the same holds true, truly, in a lot of cases. The same holds true for content inside of an email communication. If somebody wants to share, or post something up to social, they, 9 times out of 10 are likely going to copy the link and, go ahead and pop it up in whatever social environments they want to put it in. What it does do, though, is two things. So it does include, having that information there does allow your customers to know where you have a social presence. And so some of it is truly just awareness. Some of your customers might not know that you have a presence on Pinterest or that you do have a YouTube channel. Just allowing them to have that awareness can help to further their engagement with those channels with you. So they may not necessarily share a piece of content up to Facebook leveraging a share button inside your email communication, but, you have brought attention to the fact that you do have a Facebook presence, and they may, venture out there and engage more effectively. The other thing it does is reminds people. And so, the conversation, kind of continuing down this path of the conversation I was having with this client a couple of days ago, was sometimes just having it there reminds people that it's something they can do, right? So it gets them to think, like, who would I share this with? And it's a very subconscious thing. It's not like, consumers are sitting there reading your content and like, oh, who are the 65 people I could share this with? But sometimes just seeing the suggestion of sharing that content just triggers something like, oh, you know what, so-and-so might be interested in this. The hard part for us as email marketers is that we want to be able to track that, and we want to be able to, have some sense of channel attribution that we drove that. And, consequently, the reality of how people share is that you may not be able to, get a complete and total grasp on, whether or not, it was shared because of your email communication. But, it does help to further the opportunity of sharing content. And so it's important, especially when you have content that is share-worthy, to include some sense of, the suggestion of sharing via the social networks. So like I said, as you look at this, it is probably the most frequently used form of quote-unquote, I'm using my air quotes, social and email integration. But, it is an effective way of putting that kind of power of suggestion, in front of a customer. So as we look at the second kind of program here, this is looking at it in the converse. So what is it that social can do to drive email? So, as we were talking about in the last example, a lot of times email marketers are glad to put those buttons and those icons into their email communications because, it can potentially drive additional click activity, and it does have this kind of cohesion between email and social. What you don't see as much is the ability to subscribe or any kind of promotion of the email channel inside the social environment. So where you have a Facebook page, being able to drive or suggest that somebody further engage with you via email is often missing. And it is really a very interesting and kind of telling act. Because people do want to, again, as we said, want to receive promotions via email. And so they, from an intention perspective, could very well be engaging with you, in the social realm because what you post is humorous or because there's always interesting facts and tidbits. Sometimes it's not as positive, right? Sometimes people go there to either post complaints or read other things people are complaining about. Sometimes you can get this like mob mentality going on over there, but it is what it is. And but you do have this ability to say, okay, you're using us over here in social for X, Y, and Z, but then to ultimately be able to, allow them to sign up for email communication so that they can continue to engage with your brand via the email channel, as well as, promote to them more directly, in that environment, because that's what customers and subscribers have come to expect. The other benefit of really having this content or this ability to sign up for email via your social presence is that now you have an extra data point about your customer. From a source code perspective, you know that they have engaged with your Facebook page and they have now signed up for email. And even if you collect no other information, about the customer except their email address in that environment, you still have this data point that you have this Facebook interaction as well. And so it does tell you something a little bit about your customer. It tells you something a little different about that subscriber versus the rest of your customer database, and does provide you now this ability to message to them in a little bit of a different way than you may have not knowing that they had that Facebook presence or that social integration with you. All right, so the third piece of this is really making sure that you have content that is share-worthy. So it is not a situation where, you just put random things into your newsletter or your communication, or it's an offer, et cetera. You have to have content that is share-worthy. People aren't going to share just for the sake of sharing. They don't love your brand 9 times out of 10. They don't love your brand as much as you do. As much as we'd love them to, they don't. They have other things going on in their lives. And so, whatever it is that you're putting out there in front of them needs to be compelling enough that they want to share. The other thing to keep in mind is that, whatever it is that you're allowing them to share says something about them from an affinity perspective in the social space. So, others are going to see that they, either posted something or shared something, socially, and there is a direct kind of impact or a repercussion on how people perceive them because they've shared a specific piece of content. So you have to make sure that, the content that you're putting out there is share-worthy. And it's something that people are going to be proud of to, put out there in the space that they're associated with. It's almost like, their badge of honor. So, including some sense of content that is, share-worthy is important. The other thing that I would say, about this, very specifically is that not every piece of content inside of your email communication is going to meet that criteria, and that's okay. Not everything that you have to say has to be share-worthy. It doesn't have to be something that people are going to get all excited about and, share with their friends. It is, finding the right balance as you're doing your content planning, whatever that process looks like. It's different at every brand. But whatever that process for content planning looks like, identifying key moments or key elements inside of, that opportunity or inside of, your content planning to say, here are some highlight moments, right? These 3 kind of moments maybe over the course of the year, over the course of a quarter, or whatever it is, to say these things would be really cool to focus on making shareable or share-worthy. So, like I said, the big takeaway here is that the content does need to, be share-worthy. People aren't going to share it just because they like you. But the other piece of it is that not every piece of content has to be share-worthy. So it's just something to keep in mind as you kind of move forward through planning. So as we look at the 4th opportunity, so this is really a little different. So this is really an opportunity to kind of cross-pollinate and repurpose content. And so that we're clear, the recommendation here is not that you take whatever offer you put in your email and you post it up on your social sites. That is not the recommendation. I remember when I started in email, I came from the direct mail space, and it was one of those things where like, hey, we just produced this postcard, let's stick it in an email. And sometimes people still do that. I mean, I'm not even going to tell you that they've outgrown that. I mean, I've seen brands that still do it. And it is not the most effective way to repurpose your content. As we started this conversation, they are different channels with different nuances and different needs and different voices. And so you have to treat those differently. But the reality is that you do have the opportunity to make sure the content is complementary. So you want the experience to be cohesive for the customer across whatever channels they are engaging with you in. But you need to make sure that the message is tailored to the medium. So you don't want to just take whatever it is you sent in your email today and pop it into your social environment, but you do want to make sure that there is some sense of cohesion between them. And doing that can be very effective from a campaign management perspective, and it can also provide some ease of just some efficiency in content production. A lot of times developing and producing content is one of the most time-consuming aspects of all of this. And getting a little more mileage out of what it is you're putting together is a good way to find some of those efficiencies while, keeping an engaged kind of conversation going in multiple channels. So as we look at this, I mean, again, this is content related, so very similar to what we were talking about before. But this is really kind of leveraging content in different channels as a way to inform other opportunities with content. And so, I've worked with a number of brands who have, leveraged subject line testing, which is always something that's great to do and you should be doing all of the time anyway. But they were actually taking some of the results of their subject line tests and applying them then to their what it is they were putting out there on Twitter, or maybe some kind of kitschy little piece of content that they were putting out on Facebook to drive engagement. So there's this opportunity to leverage learnings from your email communications to inform and drive maybe what it is you're talking about socially. The opportunity exists in the converse as well. So if you have a piece of content that you've tweeted that has gotten, a lot of retweets or a lot of attention, in a positive way, clearly. You don't want to use negatively informed opportunities. But if it's received a lot of retweets, or if a piece of content in your Facebook page has gotten a lot of likes, or, a lot of people saw the post, you have the ability to then, let that inform pieces of content inside your email communication. So maybe they could inform your subject line, or maybe they include your hero offer or your primary piece of content or your headline. So, really being able to take what it is that you're learning in each of those channels to, drive the ability to, keep that, kind of to point number 4, keeping that cohesion between what it is you're talking about between them, but you're also leveraging successes in individual channels to help inform your approach to, the complementary channel. So like I said, these are just some examples of how you can do that. And this type of attention or interest in other channels can really help to, inform at least some aspect or focus for what it is you're doing in either email or social. So the last two here get a little broader, and these are, some examples that require a little more planning, a little more elbow grease, a little more work. But, in this example, and I've seen this be very successful for some brands, and it varies clearly based on barriers to entry and cost and price points and things like that. But referral programs and brand advocate programs work really, really well in this email social kind of combination. And it does a couple of things. So the reality is that not every customer inside your customer database are going to advocate on your behalf. Not all of them are, great customers. Not all of them love you as much as you want them to. But there are a subset of your customers inside your database that, you would deem your best customers, right? These are people that you would kind of earmark as, those with the highest lifetime value, or they have the most repeat purchase behavior, or, however it is that you're defining that. But oftentimes you'll find that those are the people who were most likely to advocate on your behalf and who will, kind of evangelize for you out in the public world. And so, looking at first looking at that ability, or, the who inside your database is most likely to evangelize on your behalf. So it does take some data analytics and some looking to, identify those people if you haven't done that previously. But then you have the ability to really kind of create, this brand advocate segment and then engage them in a way that is, both social and, via an email type of opportunity. So, promoting opportunities for them to share with their friends and have that be via, email or a social mechanism, or both. Typically what works best is, a combination of the two working hand in hand. And then encouraging behavior. So, what is it that you want them to do? How do you want them to share? Do you want them to drive conversions? But it gives this really interesting kind of mechanism to understand, inside your customer database, who is most likely to evangelize on your behalf, and then who will evangelize on your behalf. And then you start to have this ability to drive some insight into who has the most reach, who shared with more people socially, who posted their, these offers and content up to Facebook, who tweeted about it. And then ultimately you get to determine who has influence over their customer or over their social networks. How many people did I drive to actually convert or take the action we were looking for? And all of that is, really kind of an interesting way to, A, learn about your customer, but B, it gives you this ability to, build a program that is really, truly focused on leveraging the strengths of both channels. So as we look at the last kind of piece of this before we move on to our email chat today, the other piece of this, or kind of the last element that I was looking at here, is really about bringing the sense of community into your email program. And a lot of times, brands want to create this sense of community, and even bring these kind of, editorial elements into their email communications. But it stops short a little bit. So it's one thing to have a Twitter feed inside your email communication, or to have your your most recent Facebook posts or something like that. But start looking at how you can leverage the testimonial feedback and the references that people are making about your brands into your communications in a really meaningful way. So, the statistic over here is, not anything that I think would surprise any of you, right? People are seeking out, even from complete strangers, they're seeking out recommendations. They're seeking out some sense of understanding of whether or not they should go through with a purchase or not. And, how much content or how much, referral they're looking for or recommendation really tends to directly align with how big a purchase it is, right, how expensive it is. But looking at ways that you can truly integrate those moments and those opportunities into both promotional and transactional messages in a meaningful way is something that, not a lot of brands are doing right now. And there's a big opportunity to do that. So again, like I said, this requires a little more work. It requires a little more coordination, but can be largely valuable. So, in this example, we're looking at, an abandoned cart message. And, if you're able to pull in some sense of commentary or comments or reviews about the product that was abandoned, that can help improve, the chances of conversion, right? It's bringing that community voice into the email communication itself. Other ways that you can leverage that are, I know a lot of people do it with Pinterest, right? Our top 10 most pinned items of the week. You can bring those types of elements into your email communications, but really kind of bringing, that sense of community back into your email or into your email communications and into the email channel can be a really effective way of not only highlighting the presence that you have in those situations, but also in kind of improving the warm and fuzzy, right, around your email communications and your email program and opening up that dialogue again a little further. So with that, those really, like I said, as we looked at the opportunities for the integration and the complementary behaviors across, email and social. There's certainly a myriad of other ways to go about incorporating these two channels very effectively. But, like I said, sometimes it's easier and more effective to start with the easy elements and work your way up. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Ashley, for closing remarks and opening it up.
Great. Thank you, Kara. So with that, I want to quickly introduce everybody to our new Enhanced Social Loop, and it's a tool which helps you integrate the Blue Hornet platform with social media. You can acquire new subscribers with social sign-up, grow your social presence by turning subscribers into fans, engage with your audience by aligning your social and digital publishing calendars, convert through auto-triggered real-time messaging, and optimize your digital marketing efforts. So basically everything that Kara talked about today, our Social Loop platform can help with. So after the webinar is over, you'll be redirected to the Social Loop page of our website for more information, or you can contact us at Blue Hornet Communications at bluehornet.com.